All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christy Vavidich. I am the marketing manager here at Turbine Labs. Thank you all for taking time out of your schedule today to join us for our webinar. You can't sell without buyers, buying and selling in a business in a world in crisis. In today's webinar, we will be discussing the following: how buying trends have changed and are moving towards a virtual sales environment, how to leverage multiple channels within your business to maximize results, and how to leverage strategies with customers in a rapidly changing virtual sales landscape. To start, I'm going to go through a couple upfront housekeeping items. Firstly, please make sure you are on mute throughout the presentation. Secondly, during this webinar, we will be conducting some live polls with the audience. Your answer to any poll question will remain anonymous, and only collective percentages will be shown to the audience. And lastly, we will be conducting a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. However, if you do have a question before the end, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box at any point, and we will answer them at the very end. With that being said, I'm going to introduce you to today's presenters: Russell Davis, Director of Business Development at Turbine Labs, and David Brock, Founder and CEO of Partners in Excellence and author of the book, Sales Manager's Survival Guide. With that, Russell, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much, Christy, and welcome everyone to our webinar. I'm very excited to have everyone here this afternoon to talk about what we do at Turbine Labs, but more importantly, to talk about the buying trends and how things are changing within the crisis. So Turbine Labs is a leader in providing executive intelligence to customers to make intelligent buying decisions, and also taking the goals of Turbine Labs and helping them understand their business at a deeper level. I'd like to introduce David Brock. I've known David, full disclosure, for over 10 plus years. David has been instrumental in my professional growth just from his daily blog postings that I read. So David?
Well, Russell and Christy, thanks so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about the conversation today. I find myself in these kinds of conversations with all sorts of organizations around the world as everybody kind of sorts through what's happened, how do we deal with it, and so on. Just as a brief background, you can see a little bit of my profile. I'm a refugee of very, very large corporations. I have held kind of anything from entry-level sales positions. I started my selling career in IBM, went up the food chain, and have held executive positions in a number of technology companies, largely focused on turnarounds. Have co-founded some fairly important software companies way back when, and still work with a lot of those. Today, I run a boutique consulting company, and we primarily focus on business strategy and the customer-facing strategies for their organizations, how to reach and engage their customers most effectively, and so on. And you have kind of a glamour list of some of the clients that we've worked with. And I think one of the things I'm most proud about is right now the Sales Manager's Survival Guide. It's one of the top books for frontline sales managers on the market. And then this fall, it'll be complemented by the Sales Executive Survival Guide, which will focus on kind of the top sales executive or the CEO and the role of sales in high-performing organizations. So that's it. Thanks so much, Russell.
Right. I'm looking forward to the conversation, David.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get started. There we go. So, first thing we want to talk about is, how buying trends have changed and are moving, toward a virtual sales environment. One of the things I did, David, I want to start off with, I went back to one of your blog postings from April 24th called Pandemic Prospecting. And I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to read this off what I wrote down. It says, customers are very focused on the projects that have the greatest impact on their short-term recovery goals and sense of urgency. Critically looking at, revenue recovery, risk management, cash flow are the highest priorities. So 3 months later, has anything changed?
Well, I'll have a very definitive answer, yes and no. And maybe it's good to step back a little bit. You know, as I look at what the crisis, both the health crisis, the economic crisis, and kind of the social justice crises that we have converging on us right now, what we see, at least from a business point of view, is the same thing that we saw a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, except this crisis has accentuated it, both from the point of view of customers and how they look at change and moving forward and improving and growing, and from sales organizations to what are the best practices to engage and create value for our customers. So again, I think we saw similar kinds of things before this, but now they're inescapable. You know, and they're inescapable in some ways in a very good way. You know, in the past, as salespeople, trying to get our customers to change occupied a majority of our sales cycle or their buying cycle, trying to incite them to say there's a better way of doing things. There are better ways to address opportunities to grow or solve our problems. Getting them to move to the point of saying we have to change took a huge amount of time. Now change is mandatory. Everybody, as we face kind of new customers in the new world, change is mandatory. So people are looking at how to change. As we've evolved over the last 3 months, I think people are starting to say, you know, how do we manage both through today? But now they're also taking a longer term perspective. And by longer term, they're looking 3 months, 6 months, a year. Some are actually looking a couple of years out, but saying kind of what's next? How do we move from where we are right now to where we need to be? And so we see still the continued focus on revenue protection, but now revenue growth. And what new opportunities are we presented with, and how do we exploit those opportunities?
And so what is it, you know, from your perspective, so what does the seller has to do now to really take advantage of the opportunity where, you know, everyone's looking to change?
Well, I think, again, a lot of it's the same things that you saw high performance sellers do a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. But I think there's a little bit added dimension to this. There is this whole dimension around uncertainty and risk. You know, if, you know, people don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, this morning we woke up to the news that, you know, for instance, California is shutting down a lot of things. You know, various different states are reacting in different ways to things. So, you know, the thing that all of us face is uncertainty. And I think from a seller's point of view, we have a tremendous opportunity to help our customers address the issues of uncertainty and address the issues of complexity. And the main reason is we each become prisoners of our own experience. So our customers are looking at things from their perspective. As salespeople, we see hundreds, possibly across our organization, thousands of customers dealing with similar kinds of issues. And from a sales point of view, we can start seeing what's working for some customers, what's not working, what are the things they're looking at. And now we can create new and different value for our customers as we help them address those issues. We can share the experiences that we're seeing with other customers and other organizations.
And so, you know, from, you know, as a seller, then as my customer buying process has changed and their journeys change, I have to change as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do I do that as a seller?
Well, I think, again, it's always easiest, you know, to focus on the customer. What are they doing? What do they face right now? What are their hot buttons? And how can I be most helpful in helping them address those issues, address the concerns, the uncertainty, the fears that they have, their markets being completely restructured? How can I bring value to them to help them think about things differently?
Right.
And so there are a couple of aspects to that. One is I should only be working with customers for whom I can bring value. I'm not going to waste my time on customers or waste their time on customers that we don't know how to solve their problems. But then once I narrow my focus there, how do I help them figure out how to move forward in the face of all this kind of turmoil and turbulence that we see?
And that's the flip side, is that the customer only wants to work with vendors who can help them solve their problems.
Well, and that's been true always, but it's taken us maybe this pandemic to slowly start to recognize that.
Yeah, and I think, over the years, it's always been about features and benefits for a lot of sellers out there. But I think now, with the pandemic, people are looking more specifically, can you help me get over these obstacles that I have in my way? Also the other thing about, the selling and buying in today's crisis is, are you seeing the buying teams becoming larger within the organizations now, where there's more scrutiny?
It's interesting. In fact, that's a big conversation. Brent Adamson and Nick Toman, authors of Challenger and I had last week, is I'm not sure we're seeing buying teams getting larger. We don't actually have the data on that. We're seeing buying slowing down tremendously. We're seeing some more people that maybe it is the buying teams getting larger in the sense of more people indirectly getting involved in buying because of again, this confusion and uncertainty that customers are looking at. We are seeing, in some cases, we're seeing kind of a dichotomy. In some cases where it's mission critical to today, it's mission critical to our survival, the customer's survival as an organization. We're seeing sales cycles shorten tremendously. I have a client that typically had a sales cycle of somewhere around 18 to 24 months. They were doing very, very large deals in the range of 20 to 50 to 100 million in months, in 60 days, 90 days, because what they offered was mission critical to this new environment for many of their customers.
Okay.
We are now, as things start stabilizing, we're seeing sales cycles starting to lengthen in kind of that marginal mission critical area, or in some of the other areas where what we're seeing is, because people don't know what's happening because of what's next, where's the economy going, how are things going to open up, how does world trade look, what do supply chains look like, and so on. We're seeing, in the face of that uncertainty and just trying to figure out what their futures are, that sales cycles are getting much longer than they were in the past.
All right. One other thing before we move to the next topic here. I was on a couple of webinars over the last couple of weeks, and there's this discussion about, now everything's going virtual sales environment. Do you start taking your best rep and aligning them to your best customer, regardless of their location? So if my best rep is sitting in the UK and I have a customer in Los Angeles, they're saying, well, give the rep in the UK that account to manage because that's your best person. I disagree with that. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the only right answer is it depends, but I tend to disagree with that. I mean, one is if your rep in the West Coast isn't performing at top level, you need to coach them to perform at the top level, or find somebody who does. Because, let's say you take this scenario of your best rep is in the UK and you assign all your great customers to that best rep. Well, pretty soon that best rep becomes the worst rep because they're overloaded and can't respond. So it's not, so I think the implicit thinking behind that statement is one of abandoning, upgrading, and getting all our, shifting kind of that bell curve to the right and moving performance of our best, of our people up as much as we can.
Okay. All right. So before we go to the next topic here, we're going to post our first poll question for everyone. So go ahead and answer that. We're going to give you 20 seconds, and then we'll share the results. All right, Christy, can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. What is the primary data source for sales prospecting? Okay. So 0 word of mouth or data.com. All right. Well, thank you for that. So, we talk about, and you talked about this on your blog a few times, about leveraging channels within business to maximize results. So let's really dive into this and kind of get some clarification, because you're talking beyond just channel partners, correct?
Yes, yeah. And I think really what we're looking at is, and this comes from a lot of the Gartner research, a lot of work that Brent and Nick do. And I'm, if it's not obvious, I'm a real fan of their work, as well as some of the work of CSO Insights and so on. Is the research is showing that customers are leveraging multiple channels of information or multiple channels to learn and educate themselves about issues going on in their business, issues going on in their markets, potential solutions or things that they should be paying attention to. So so we've known for years that people are hitting on our websites. They're looking for content and they're looking to learn on the websites. They're going to places like LinkedIn and participating in discussion groups or debates that are going on, through the LinkedIn channels. And through other kinds of things, at some point, trade shows or some version of trade shows will come back, webcasts, webinars, and so on. So customers are looking for a number of different ways to learn and educate themselves and think about how they improve their businesses. One of the challenges we find is we aren't necessarily presenting a consistent image across those different channels of learning, that we create confusion with our customers, that, for instance, they go to a website and they start learning certain things, and the salesperson talks to them and isn't delivering maybe a totally consistent message. Or that we're in fact slowing the customer down because they've been able to educate themselves and move to a certain part of their buying process through certain channels, and maybe salespeople not recognizing that take them back to zero and start, trying to do things again. So I think we have to recognize that there are multiple channels, multiple paths that every customer is going to leverage to learn and to assess different solutions and grow. I think the latest Gartner data shows it's something like 3+ channels. Clearly the sales channel, our websites, and then other channels like LinkedIn or so on and so forth. So we have to think about that and think about the consistency of the message and how we migrate customers through their buying process across all those channels.
So are you seeing influencers playing a more significant role now as a channel?
Well, because I'm supposed to be one, I hope so. But yeah, I think, I guess I would say people are looking for insight and people are looking for answers in all the different places that they can. And to the degree that there are influencers and people that stand out, that they listen to and pay attention to, and are credible, yeah, they are influencers. And I think we see that in society in general. If we look at kind of people taking different positions on different topics. They don't necessarily have to be smart or well-informed people, but there are people that are influencers. Sure. that kind of shape the way we think, and their goal is to shape the way we think. So I think influencers are an important channel for all of us to think about in developing to help our customers.
Okay. As you know, is there a company that you could share with the audience that you think does the multiple channels very well?
Oh, geez. I think I see organizations learning how to do that better. Okay. I think typically where I think people have had more experience over a longer period of time is in any kind of B2C type of channel. And and typically in complex B2B, a lot of the best lessons that we have come from B2C or B2B2C types of channels, because they've long been, if you look at going back as far in history as you want, is B2C channels have been leveraging advertising, they've been leveraging promotions, they've been leveraging thought leaders and influencers in social channels. They've been leveraging the social channels. They've leveraging merchandising in product placement and those kinds of things. So they've been doing that very, very well. It's for us to start in B2B to start looking at what are some of the principles that we can adapt and tinker with that work in helping us engage our customers and our markets.
Right, no, thank you very much. That was really good. So we're going to go to our next poll question here. And it's where, everyone answer this one. It's, where is your quota attainment currently sitting for 2020? At plan, over plan, or under plan? And again, you have 15 to 20 seconds to respond, please.
And hopefully you answer that honestly. Oh, yeah.
You did. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. So, before we kind of get into that, David, going back to just the last poll results, 88% of the audience are under plan. Is how many companies have gone back in and adjusted quotas based on what was going on, or did a lot of companies just kind of, keep it business as usual, do you think?
And I have, I think, probably a limited view of that, more based just on the clients I'm working with directly. Most of the people I've seen have said, we aren't going to do anything to adjust our plans at all yet. They're keeping kind of the same goals and quotas. They are doing some things in terms of maybe adjusting incentive plans and adjusting metrics and compensation plans to maybe make people whole. But right now, because of this uncertainty that everybody's facing, they don't know what, next month looks like, 3 months from now looks like, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of, let's keep a steady course going forward. Let's do everything we can to try and recoup and achieve plans, and let's see where we can grow. And I think towards the end of fiscal years, you'll see a lot of people kind of trying to reconsider and really relook at what's reasonable as we go forward.
Okay, all right. We also have a question that I have posted here, and I think it kind of is a nice segue into this next topic here. And the question is, what is the best way to get the attention of a prospect who has been being inundated with companies believing they can add value to the prospect?
Well, I mean, and again, this is something where I think my answer a year ago, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago would be exactly the same as it is now. I think the urgency of doing that, given the circumstances both our customers face and our own organizations face create a higher sense of urgency. But it's basically talk about what the customers are care about talking about, and that's about them. It's about what they face. It's about their problems. It's about their goals and dreams. And right now, a lot of it is how do we survive? How do we make sense of what we do? What should we be doing next to be able to grow so that our own people can be making their goals, and so on and so forth. And so we have to be focusing first and foremost on those issues. And then we have to bridge from those issues to saying, here's what we can do to help you achieve those goals. And traditionally, what we've always done as salespeople in the past, and I'm painting everybody with the same issue, and it's unfair, but is we focus on what we're interested in, which is selling something, which is achieving our quotas and achieving our goals. So we have this kind of chasm in expectations that's been created between what the customers care about and what we care about. And the only way we're going to be able to close that gap or cross that chasm is to move to the customer side of things.
And so do you make that move by using an incentive program to move the sales rep to that direction? Or do you just train them and educate them and coach them to get there? Or is it a combination of all the above?
Yeah, I've never, I've never been asked the incentive piece of that question before, and my knee-jerk reaction is, why would I ever tie incentives to that? Because the job of the people have to be very clear about what their jobs is and how they achieve success. I will never get a PO unless I help my customers solve their problem. Once they start solving their problem and have determined that we're a part of that solution, we'll get a PO. So the fastest way for me to get a PO is to help the customer solve the problem. And I think a lot of people just really miss this kind of fundamental, just basic sales 101 type thing is I recognize that we each have our goals to make our quota and to do what our companies expect us for, but how do we achieve that through the customers? So it's simply a matter of saying being very clear about what our job is, being very clear about the most effective strategies to do this. I wrote something the other day. It's stunning to me if I look at just most marketing and most prospecting is we know, you go and talk to any executive, we know that we're supposed to focus on the customers. We're supposed to focus on our ICP. We're supposed to focus on things from a customer point of view. We know the things that we should do. We have tremendous tools in terms of marketing automation systems, sales automation systems, AI and intelligence gathering systems, things like some of the tools that Turbine Labs provides, things like can get through LinkedIn or through other kinds of organizations. It's stunning to me that knowing all this stuff and having those tools, that we don't use them, that we still send out thousands, tens of thousands, millions of unpersonalized emails to people who aren't in our ICP and who never will be in our ICP, who don't care. It's stunning to me that we send out emails or make telephone calls that are buy my product kind of thing without engaging the customer in what are you facing? I can help you, and here's how I can help you.
Okay.
So we've known how to do these things for years and years and years, yet we don't do them. And fundamentally, I don't believe, and I'm sorry for launching into a tirade here,
No,
but fundamentally, it's not a salesperson's problem, or it's not a marketing person's problem, or it's not an SDR problem. It's a leadership problem.
I was going to ask you that. And so now that everything's moving to virtual, how do you course correct leadership now in a virtual world? Because if they weren't good at it physically, everyone in the same office, how does that change now virtually?
I think I think in some ways it doesn't change things at all. Basic principles are basic principles, and we aren't executing on the basic principles, whether it is face-to-face, whether it was over the phone, whether it was through conferencing types of things before all this happened, whether it's through conferencing and Zoom and Teams and virtual things that we do right now. So we have to be doing more of the right things. We have to be engaging customers in meaningful ways that are relevant to them. We have to use the tools, whether it's emails, whether it's phone calls, whether it's social sites, whether it's texts, whether it's these kinds of meetings. We have to be engaging them in the right way, talking about issues they care about, and so on and so forth. So that's a fundamental, and it's a huge gap that we aren't doing right now. At the same time, I think there's a challenge that this medium still has holes in, is that it's very effective for us to have kind of conversations and to, see each other, talk to each other, evaluate, what's in the background, or in my case, what's not in the background, and get distracted by that. But there's a certain amount of communications loss. We think of, I sit in these big meetings, I can't read the room. I can't see the body language. I can see, Russell, your expression if you're talking or if I'm addressing you, but I can't see and really read the other thing, the other parts of things that happen. There's that space in between where a lot gets done in sidebar conversations or on the way to get coffee or getting lunch. There's that thing of somebody who said something I thought was very astute to the other day, as he says, we use all 5 of our senses when we engage people in conversations, particularly when salespeople engage people in talking about change. Right now, these medium just allow us to maybe engage our ears, our mouths, and our eyes, but we're missing other things. So I think as we move forward in this kind of virtual world, we have to think of these other aspects of communication in connecting human to human, that there still are gaps in this technology.
Yeah, and I think also, to your point, David, it also becomes more difficult to find out who is the fox sitting in that conference room table.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to do virtually.
It is. I mean, and it's clear. But part of it, we can walk back and say, I'm sure 40, 50, 60 years ago, people all of a sudden said, the telephone is the next thing. All selling will be done on the telephone. And now we're saying, Zoom and Teams and WebEx and those things are the next thing. Everything will be done through that, I think it's a combination of things, but the real issue is how do we connect effectively on a human to human basis? How do we leverage the tools, the technology to help us do that? But where are the gaps, and how do we fill in those gaps on connecting with people who, face all the frailties and strengths and weaknesses that each of us have? How do we connect and create meaning in that context?
Okay, talking to the sellers that you work with out there, are they finding it more difficult to communicate and to connect with their prospects virtually?
Well, there was kind of this cycle as everybody kind of started working from home and doing this virtual work. People were lonely, and so people actually were answering the phone. They were accepting prospecting calls and things like that. I think as we've kind of settled into this new norm, people, reaching out to prospects and connecting with them has become a little bit more difficult, though probably not as difficult as it was if I looked 6 months ago or a year ago. And all because people still want to feel connected. And even if it's some poor salesperson that's calling me and prospecting to me, it's a way to start feeling connected and less isolated.
Sure.
So in some sense, we're seeing that happen. But the other thing, though, is so much of what's happening is becoming very asynchronous. And all is when we see people's decision-making cycles or buying cycles lengthen because of the risk and uncertainty, also because of the difficulty of coordinating things, is that there is some loss between sitting in a meeting and in a face-to-face meeting and looking everybody in the eye and right. Seeing what's happening and seeing this virtually or people not participating. So you're trying to coordinate a whole bunch of independent actions and move them into converging to make a decision. So we see, buyers themselves are struggling with how to buy more effectively and make their own internal process better. And then we as salespeople are struggling with how do we map our activities on top of that and create more meaningful experience for them.
Okay, all right. Well, I know we have another poll question to head to now. And it is, what enhancements or changes would you value in your current sales process? All right.
That's fascinating.
Improving, okay. Action intelligence and real-time insights. All right. Okay. Next slide, please. Yes, so we're now to Q&A. So let's open it up for Q&A. And David, thank you again. This was great.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed this so far. I'm looking forward to the Q&A. One thing, I still struggle with Zoom, and I know we're supposed to do this, but every once in a while, you're over here on my screen, and I keep wanting to look at you in your eye, and I look shifty looking away from the camera. And
I know, same here.
And that's still something I'm learning to adapt to in these conferencing things. So I apologize to the audience if I'm not looking you in the eye.
But I did put a shirt and tie on for you. This is my first shirt with long sleeves in 3 months.
I almost had heart failure when I saw you.
All right. So Christy, questions?
Yeah, we just got one from the audience. Does the ability for people to have more competitive insights help make up for some of the 5 senses that we're missing in the sales process? And can relationships be accelerated digitally?
I think relationships, I'm not sure if they can be accelerated digitally. My intuition says yes. I think they can be tremendously enhanced.
Absolutely.
I think if we go back to this issue of saying customers are using multiple channels to learn. And so if we look at digital most broadly, what are the different channels of digital engagement? What are the multiple channels that we can use to amplify our customers' ability to learn and educate themselves, and for them to start making sense of things themselves? And how do we make sure whatever channels we're using as an organization are presenting those consistent messages and helping the customers learn more, learn faster, and learn how to change better? So I think, this whole move to digital, which has been on for years, is really critical. And I think being very thoughtful about the consistency across the channels and how we as salespeople leverage these multiple channels. One of the things is again, Brent, Nick, and I get into a lot of conversations about the future of selling. You look at customers are engaging us in multiple channels. How do we, from a sales and marketing point of view, align ourselves and intersect the customer with where they're engaging us in a way that's consistent? They have a consistent experience across all those channels.
Right. And I also think it's, the other thing that we didn't talk about today, and I think it's even more important moving forward, is becoming a trusted advisor, to our customers. Because at this point, they're only going to see us virtually, digitally. And so I think from a digital perspective, if I can gather more information about my prospect's business, I can add value to them, and they're willing to take my call.
And see, that's an important point, Russell. And there's another aspect to the question that had to do with competitive intelligence. And this may be a little bit controversial, but I don't care a whole lot about competitive intelligence. What I care more about is learning about my customer, their markets and their customer, in their industries, and what challenges they're facing, and how I can offer them some leadership in understanding those challenges. So I really look at kind of this digital transformation as being less important from a competitive knowledge point of view, though I'd be foolish not to exploit it for that, but more important to really help me understand and connect more effectively and impactfully with my customers about what they care about.
Okay, all right.
All right, next question that we had was, you mentioned the term actionable intelligence in the last poll question. How do you define this?
So at Turbine Labs, we define actionable intelligence. I look at it as a two-way street between the buyer and the seller, where one, as the buyer, I can collect information on a vendor to help me in my selection choice, and also to kind of do my pre-discovery is, I can take a deep dive into that vendor, understanding their marketplace, their industries, and also leverage, and see who their other customers are. From a seller's perspective, actionable intelligence is the same. I can target and focus on my prospects and my customer and take a deep dive into that business to understand, where are their leverage points for me and my business to come in and have an in-depth conversation of value to that client that says, this is how we can help you at Turbine Labs, as an example. And understanding, here are some key wins that we could do for them, there's always going to be effort, but come in with just a little bit more insight. And so actionable intelligence is taking information that you can use immediately in the sales process. And I always kind of joke with people. I look at, this Discover.org and data.com and all those systems as being stale, because once you receive that information, it was already a survey that they did, a couple of months ago. So with actionable intelligence, you want something real time that's impactful.
Yeah, I think actionable intelligence, that's really intelligence about the customer, what they're facing, what their challenges are, what some of their problems are, maybe what some of their strategies and priorities are, enable us to engage more effectively with what they think is important, or even to incite them to change. A few years ago, one of my clients asked me to make a call on a customer they've been working on for several years to try and do something with. And, there was a little piece of intelligence that was very obvious. It was a large grocery store chain. And so I met with the CFO and I said, do you realize you're paying your suppliers $13 billion a year to put stuff in green dumpsters in the back of your stores? And he looked at me and he said, how did you come up with that? Well, it was intelligence about kind of just basically, I looked at their 10Ks. There was some intelligence we had around scrap and waste in grocery stores. And so we were able to come with insight that was very specific. And when I explained that to the CFO, he got up, went to the whiteboard, and he and I started going back and forth. We found that they were actually paying $22 billion a year to put stuff in green dumpsters. And he turned to us and said, how can you help me? And it's those kinds of things that are bring insight and relevance. In this case, they've been trying to get the customer to change for 2 years, but they never found the lever to incite them to change. So it's these kinds of things that create value and insight and accelerate the ability of customers to say, I need to do something different. And that's the real power behind actionable intelligence. And it's sitting there all around us, but we don't use it to our advantage and to our customers' advantage.
Okay. So, Christy, I know there's a couple of other questions here online. Yep. I'll read this one off. Okay. As a sales leader, how would you recommend we reallocate budget that we're not spending on travel and entertainment?
I'd say spend it on a consultant that can help you get better, but no, it's part of that crass kind of commercial kind of.
We should spend it on Turbine Labs and get that actionable intelligence.
but yeah, no, you know, I think I don't know that I have the answer to that. I don't know that, you know, maybe I don't need to spend it. You know, maybe I can increase my margins. You know, again, the right answer is it depends. You know, I do think I would deploy it in raising my the skills of my people to more effectively engage, understand their customers and engage them in meaningful ways. You know, I deploy some of that, you know, clearly in whether it's SEO or some other kinds of things, in helping shape customers, helping educate them digitally on things they should be thinking about, things that they should be changing, and making it easier for them to find us and position ourselves as thought leaders and opinion leaders on things they care about.
So you led me to another point. Are you seeing companies looking to start spending again on sales training? Or is that pretty much on hold right now?
Oh, no, it's interesting. The very top performing companies that I see are looking at making very big investments, but very thoughtful investments. I mean, these companies are seeing the world is transforming, their customers are transforming. They're investing in how do they lead these customers in these important transformations? You know, how do they help bring certainty to an uncertain, complex world? How do they offer leadership? And you see companies saying, how do we expand into new markets? How do we create value in new ways that drive revenue? And you see some saying, how do we see share from everybody else? And they're going to see share through offering that kind of value-based leadership. So I see them being very aggressive, and I see them, frankly, investing. I don't know whether I'd call it huge amounts of money. For some of them, they're multi-billion-dollar organizations, and they're investing tens and hundreds of millions. But I see them thoughtfully saying, how do we take this opportunity, take advantage of it for ourselves, for our customers, and offer real leadership that allows us to grow in unimaginable ways? And it's really exciting working with those guys because they think very differently as opposed to those that are still thinking a little bit in months of the past of saying, how do we minimize revenue loss?
Okay, all right. Christy, do you have any other questions that we need to answer here?
I think the last question that we had, and then we'll wrap up, is how can marketing support sales initiatives right now?
So and I'll speak from just being, from a sales guy, sales leader. for way too long. The one thing that's hasn't changed to this day is air coverage. You know, you just need air coverage. And I think even more so in today's marketplace, which is, you know, information and intelligence is key. So the more information I have available that allows me to go in and have an in-depth, intelligent conversation and come across as knowledgeable to my prospect and to my customer, that's a win for me. I mean, so, you know, by providing us with the tools, then I can go out and build my own, I can build my journey. But I think that is still the challenge that we're faced with today is, you know, just not enough air coverage. And when I talk to other sales professionals out there, you know, you would be surprised. A lot of these enterprise sales guys are still doing all the heavy lifting on their own, working for large enterprise sales companies.
Yeah, I think I would, in the spirit of kind of yes, and I think that air coverage is important. And I think that concept of I think so much of marketing may have been focused on kind of the front end. How do we attract prospects and customers to be interested in us? And what we're seeing marketing doing is saying, what are the most important things that I can provide my customer? And again, you think of these customers going through their buying journey, leveraging multiple channels. What are the most important pieces of information, assets, resources that we can map to our customers as they go through their buying journey, whether they're going through their buying journey, just looking at our website, talking to other people, talking to salespeople. So how do I start looking at this more holistically in terms of the whole journey and providing the right resources to them through that journey? How do I personalize that even greater to, you know, the right kind of personas that, say, a CFO is interested in hearing our message in a way that's very different than a CMO or a CRO or a VP of manufacturing might have, depending on who's involved. How do I personalize that for markets, and those kinds of things?
So there's one more question. I got to read it, Christy, so I apologize. And this is probably from David. Dave, other than the book you wrote, what is your favorite B2B sales book?
Oh, geez. I guess, I mean, I have lots of favorites, and I'll alienate a lot of very close friends, and also I'll take both a genuine but also a cheap way out. One of my two, I think, of my favorite books or favorite authors were Peter Drucker in, say, The Effective Executive, and Mac Hannon, who wrote the original Consultative Selling. And I had the fortune of meeting Mac and doing some work with him for a few years before he passed away. But if you look at Mac's book that came out, I think it came out in the late 60s, all the principles are foundational and critical to our ability to engage customers today. If you look at my book and a lot of my writing and a lot of modern writers' writings, is they still go back to reiterating in a different way, maybe polished up for today's markets and today's audiences, but they all are based on the same foundations that Mac wrote about. So I'd say, you know, go on to Amazon or go to a library and pick up Mac's book. It's probably the single, even more important than my book, it's probably the single most important book a B2B salesperson could read. And then after that, start reading Peter Drucker, because he really looks at foundational issues around business success, about how people can be successful in their own businesses. And if we understand that, then we can connect with customers much more effectively.
Right.
And that's a cheap way out to not, you know.
Well, Dave, again, appreciate you participating this afternoon on the call with us. Christy, thank you for everything that you've done putting this together today. So thanks everyone, and have a great day and keep on selling.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.